It was a brisk fall morning in a wealthy suburb, where polished estates and manicured lawns told the story of lives built on perfection and excess. The sun barely pierced through the mist that rolled off the trees, casting a soft glow over the neighborhood's gleaming cars and immaculate driveways. On the outside, it was a picture-perfect world, but beneath the surface, tensions simmered, waiting for the right moment to break through. At the center of this world was Robert Grant, a successful self-made millionaire whose fortune seemed endless. His sprawling estate sat at the edge of the neighborhood, almost isolated from the other mansions, as though it existed in its own world, a world of power, control, and isolation. Robert had everything. His empire was growing, his marriage seemingly solid, and his status as a successful businessman established. But no one could see the crack forming in the facade, not yet. The biggest secret of Robert's life was the young woman who worked as his personal secretary, Anna Wells. Anna had been with Robert for several years, climbing the corporate ladder within his company, though always in his shadow. She was ambitious, intelligent, and driven, but those very qualities had pushed her into the role of his secretary, where she felt both valued and trapped. On the surface, Anna was dedicated to her work, loyal to the millionaire who had given her a chance to succeed. But behind her professional demeanor, something far darker lurked. As the months passed, Anna's feelings toward Robert morphed from admiration to something more dangerous: resentment and desire. Yet, like everyone in Robert's world, she played her part. She hid her inner turmoil behind a mask of professionalism, always smiling, always quiet, always loyal. The other key player in this tale was Caroline, Robert's wife. Caroline came from old money, and like her husband, she enjoyed the luxury that came with their social status. She wasn't a woman easily swayed by emotions, and her relationship with Robert was built on years of mutual respect, trust, and a commitment to the image they portrayed to the world. But within the walls of their mansion, Caroline's growing discontent began to take root. She noticed Robert's increasing distance, his late nights at the office, his distracted nature when he was home. The whispers of a growing tension were never fully acknowledged, but they were always there. What no one could see was how fragile their lives were, hidden beneath the glossy sheen of wealth and stability. The cracks in their relationships had started to form long before the crime was ever even thought of. The office where Robert worked was a cold and clinical place, with floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over his empire. It was here, in this sterile environment, where the danger started. Slowly, almost imperceptibly at first. Robert's growing obsession with Anna was masked behind business meetings and late-night discussions. But there was something else, a power dynamic, shifting under the surface, a manipulation that neither of them fully understood until it was too late. The first signs of trouble were subtle: a lingering glance, a too-long conversation in a dimly lit hallway, an unintended brush of hands. But soon, Anna's feelings could no longer be ignored. She found herself pulled into the orbit of Robert's world, drawn to him in ways she had never expected. She began to feel that she was more than just his secretary, that perhaps, in some small way, she was important to him in a way his wife could never be. Robert, though aware of his growing feelings for Anna, kept his emotions carefully guarded. But his actions betrayed him. He gave her gifts, asked her opinions, held private meetings that lasted longer than necessary. Slowly, their professional relationship morphed into something more, intimate, yet unspoken. Anna's growing frustration, however, was twofold. She was flattered by Robert's attention, but she was also increasingly disgusted by the way he treated her as a mere tool in his life. She had hoped to gain more than just his approval. She wanted more. And it had become clear that the line between being valued and being manipulated was almost non-existent. The resentment she had harbored for so long now turned into a need for control. She wanted out. But she was trapped in the power dynamic that Robert had created. The pressure around them intensified. Anna's debts mounted, and she saw a way out in the form of Robert's promises to help her, to take care of her. But with each promise, She felt more like a pawn in his game, never quite good enough, never quite free. Meanwhile, Robert was becoming obsessed with Anna's every move. His control over her grew stronger, yet so did his jealousy. He could not tolerate the thought of Anna being with anyone else, and soon it became apparent that his feelings for her were far darker than simple affection. Caroline, on the other hand, was beginning to unravel. Her husband's late nights became a pattern she could no longer ignore. She hired a private investigator, and what she learned shook her to the core. The affair, which had started as a whisper, had now become undeniable. She confronted Robert, screaming, demanding answers, pleading for him to end the relationship. Robert's response was cold. He seemed unbothered, indifferent even, as if this betrayal was just another part of his world that he could control. This pushed Caroline to the brink, a woman of immense dignity and pride, now questioning everything about her life and her marriage. As Anna and Robert's relationship grew more intense, Caroline's mental state deteriorated. She became erratic, depressed, unable to face the truth of her reality. Tensions within the household reached their breaking point, with Caroline's coldness and Robert's ever-present disregard for her feelings creating an almost unbearable pressure. It was now clear that something had to give. The night the crime took place was, on the surface, like any other, until it wasn't. The office, which had once been a place of sterile professionalism, was now a battlefield, where power, jealousy, and desire collided. Anna had decided, in a fit of desperation, to confront Robert. The affair had gone on long enough. She wanted freedom. Freedom from him. From the game he had been playing with her. From the web of lies they had both spun. She didn't know what she would say to him, but it didn't matter. She knew that the moment had arrived, and that was all that mattered. What she didn't expect was the violent confrontation that would ensue. As Anna stormed into the office, demanding to know the truth, Robert's reaction was swift, his calm exterior cracking under the weight of his secrets. Their argument escalated quickly. Words turned to shoves, and shoves turned to something far more dangerous. Robert, pushed to the brink, snapped, his emotions completely overtaking his actions. Anna, realizing the depths of Robert's control, fought back. But in doing so, she set off a chain of events she couldn't have predicted. Just as the situation reached its peak, Caroline entered the room. She had come to confront Robert about the affair, but what she witnessed in that office, her husband in a fit of rage, Anna equally furious and betrayed, was the last straw. Her anger, her heartbreak, and her sense of betrayal culminated in a moment of terrifying violence. What happened next was a blur, a fatal blow, an accident, or maybe an act of vengeance. The immediate aftermath was chaotic. Robert was panicked, desperately trying to cover up what had just happened. Anna, her heart racing, could not comprehend the mess she had helped create. Caroline, too, was lost in the turmoil, her mind reeling as she tried to piece together the fragments of what had just occurred. It was a moment of pure horror, and none of them could escape the consequences. The aftermath of the crime was devastating for all involved. Robert's life began to unravel in ways he had never imagined. His business empire, once stable and growing, started to crumble as the media caught wind of the events that had transpired. Public opinion turned against him, and even those who had once admired him now saw him for what he truly was, a man consumed by his own ambition, willing to destroy anything in his path to maintain control. Anna, despite the role she played in the tragedy, became a figure of sympathy in the media, a woman manipulated by the very man she had once thought she loved. But for her, the guilt was overwhelming. She tried to convince herself that she had no other choice, but deep down, she knew she had been complicit. The shame she felt would haunt her for the rest of her life. Caroline, the wife who had once been the embodiment of elegance and control, was now a broken woman. Her public persona was shattered, and she was left to pick up the pieces of a life she had once taken for granted. The community saw her as a victim, but she knew the truth. Her husband's betrayal had destroyed her, and she was left with nothing but the wreckage. In the end, justice was served, but it was cold and impersonal. Robert's empire collapsed, and he faced legal consequences for his actions, though the punishment hardly seemed to fit the crime. Anna was left to reckon with the guilt of what had happened, her life forever altered by the choices she had made. Caroline, though publicly vindicated, was left with the emotional scars of betrayal, her life no longer the perfect facade it once had been. The crime had shown the world the darker side of ambition, desire, and power. It had exposed the fragility of relationships, the hidden cost of wealth, and the dangerous games people play when they believe they are untouchable. The story ended with the world forever changed, the characters irrevocably altered, and society left to ponder the cost of human nature and its flaws.